Hey there, my friend. I'm genuinely happy you've chosen to spend time on this video. And if you hit that subscribe button, well, that would truly brighten my day. No kidding. It'd mean the world. So let's dive right in. I'm Jordan, and this story takes us back a number of years, back to my college days. At the time, Madison and I had shared a close friendship for over 2 years before I finally gathered the courage to ask her out. We first met during our sophomore year at State University, brought together by a study group for an economics course. What started as simple collaboration on assignments turned into something far more personal. We started grabbing coffee between classes, traded funny messages late at night, and began spending weekends together. My feelings didn't erupt suddenly. They unfolded quietly over time. I began to notice how much I looked forward to her messages, more than I should have. When she canceled plans, it stung more than I'd admit to anyone. By the time we hit the end of our junior year, I was completely smitten, but I kept telling myself we were just good friends. Madison had a naturally affectionate way about her, one that made everyone feel seen, and I couldn't tell if I stood out or was simply one of many. What made it harder was how easy it was to talk to her. Our conversations never felt forced. She'd randomly send updates about her day, ask for my opinion on the smallest things, and always listened with genuine interest. When we hung out, I often had to remind myself to keep my cool. Eventually, I started analyzing every little moment, like some low-level detective. Was that laugh because I was actually funny, or was she just being polite? When she chose to spend time with me one-on-one, did that mean anything? When she texted quirky thoughts late at night, was I the only one getting them, or just another name in her contacts? Everything changed one Thursday evening early in our senior year. We were at a party, and I spent most of the night watching her talk to a guy I vaguely recognized from campus. Nothing inappropriate happened, but seeing her lean in, laugh, and look so engaged sparked something in me. I realized I couldn't keep going like this. I knew I had to make a choice. Either take the risk and tell her how I felt, or slowly start detaching from the friendship. That night, walking home by myself, I came to a decision that terrified me. I'd spent too long in this cycle of hesitation, reading into things, holding back, spinning in circles of uncertainty. It wasn't fair to either of us. There was an invisible tension in our friendship, and I was the one causing it by not being honest. But confessing how I felt? That felt like jumping off a cliff. Madison was a huge part of my life. If she didn't feel the same, I'd still have to see her all the time. Classes, mutual friends, everything. It could get awkward fast. Still, I chose to go for it. That weekend, I spent hours trying to find the right approach. I practiced different ways of saying it, hoping to strike the right balance between relaxed and heartfelt. If I played it too cool, she might not realize what I meant. If I laid it on too thick, I might scare her away. By Tuesday, I picked up the phone and called her. No texts. I needed to hear her voice. I didn't want to get stuck overthinking punctuation or word choices. I asked if she'd have dinner with me that Friday, just the two of us, at her favorite spot. To my surprise, she agreed right away. No pause, no questions about others joining. Just a warm yes, full of what sounded like genuine enthusiasm. For a brief moment, I wondered if she'd been waiting for me to say something all along. Maybe I'd been imagining the distance and she actually felt the same. Still, those few days leading up to Friday dragged painfully slow. I cycled through outfit after outfit, searched online for backup conversation topics like I was preparing for a debate, and even mentally rehearsed what I might say if the moment to confess arrived. Part of me thought she already sensed my feelings. Another part feared I was about to ruin the most meaningful connection I'd ever had. Friday finally rolled around. I showed up early, 10 minutes ahead of our reservation. I'd picked a quiet corner table and even memorized the menu just in case there was a lull in conversation. When Madison walked in right on time at 7:30, I felt a wave of nerves hit me. She looked amazing. She wore a navy dress I hadn't seen before. It fit her perfectly and made her eyes stand out. Her hair, usually pulled back, was down in soft waves, and her makeup was more refined than usual. She glanced around the room, saw me, and when our eyes met, she gave a smile that nearly took my breath away. From the very beginning, the dinner flowed effortlessly. Our rhythm was just as smooth as always, but something in the air had shifted. Maybe it was the glow of candlelight, or the way she carried herself that evening, or maybe we both just knew this wasn't a casual hangout. She was even more animated than usual, laughing easily, holding my gaze longer, guiding the conversation into deeper waters. We started with a shared appetizer, then ordered mains. She went for the salmon, I chose the ribeye. She complimented my choice of venue multiple times, said she'd been wanting to try the place, and seemed touched that I'd made a reservation in advance. Our conversations spanned everything. What struck me most was how fully present she was. She remembered tiny things I'd mentioned weeks before and brought them up with real interest. I kept looking for the perfect moment to share what was on my heart. Saying something during the appetizer felt too soon. During the main course felt like a gamble. I figured dessert might be best, once we were relaxed and winding down, and if things went poorly, at least the night was almost over. When the server came by to ask about dessert, Madison said yes right away and suggested we share the chocolate cake. As we waited for it to arrive, she got up to use the restroom. I sat there alone for a few minutes, trying to breathe, trying to quiet my thoughts and get ready for what I knew I had to say next. This was the moment I'd been building toward for months, and I wasn't about to retreat. As she slid back into her seat, the dessert arrived, perfectly timed. We shared a few remarks about how rich and indulgent it was, passing casual comments while savoring each bite. When she raised her fork for what looked like the final taste, I took a steady breath. It had to happen now. I began by expressing how much her companionship had meant to me over the past few years. I brought up meaningful experiences, small, specific moments that had left a mark. I wanted her to know that regardless of where things might go next, I deeply appreciated what we'd built. Then I told her that, slowly but unmistakably, my feelings had changed. What had started as a close bond had evolved into something more heartfelt. I admitted I'd kept those feelings bottled up for a long time, unsure whether it was worth disturbing the balance, but that I couldn't stay silent anymore. I tried to speak with honesty without overwhelming her, open but not pleading. As the words left my mouth, I noticed her expression begin to shift. The warmth from earlier began to fade, replaced with something more distant, more cautious. She leaned slightly away, folded her hands neatly in her lap, and her gaze broke from mine. I could tell, before she even said anything, that I already had my answer. She gave me her full attention while I finished, then paused, choosing her response with care. When she finally replied, her words were kind but unmistakable. She said she was genuinely touched, that she truly valued me, but that she had never thought of me in a romantic way. Our friendship, she said, mattered too much to risk by blurring the lines. She explained further. It wasn't about me personally. Life was coming at her fast. Graduation, job applications, the uncertainty of the next chapter. Getting into a relationship, she said, would only complicate things unnecessarily. She told me I was a good person, and that someone would be lucky to be with me, just not her. When she finished, she looked at me expectantly, as though preparing for a reaction, maybe a plea, a rebuttal, some kind of counteroffer. But I didn't give her that. I met her eyes, offered a genuine smile, and thanked her for her honesty. I told her I was glad I'd said something instead of staying silent and wondering forever. Then I signaled the waiter. Madison seemed slightly taken aback by how composed I was. She started to say something about hoping this wouldn't change our dynamic, but I quickly reassured her that it wouldn't. I respected her choice completely. When the bill came, she reached for her purse, but I stopped her and gave the server my card. She protested, offering to split it, but I gently declined. I had asked her out, picked the restaurant, and paying had always been part of the plan, regardless of the outcome. Once the check was settled, I stood and helped her with her chair. We walked out together to the parking lot, and I escorted her to her car, just like always. She seemed unsure about how to end the night, but I kept it simple. I offered her a heartfelt hug, said I'd see her around campus, and didn't try to schedule another hangout. No awkward lingering, no push for a follow-up. Just a warm goodbye. I waited until she was safely in her car before heading to mine. Strangely, the drive home was peaceful. Yes, there was a sting, but I wasn't scheming about how to change her mind. I'd carried these emotions for months, overanalyzing every word and interaction, searching for clues. Now I finally had a clear answer. It wasn't the one I'd hoped for, but at least I didn't have to wonder anymore. And over the next couple of days, I began adjusting to that truth more easily than I expected. I didn't spiral. I didn't rehash the conversation over and over. I didn't sit down to write a follow-up text in hopes of reversing her decision. Instead, it felt like I was stepping out of a fog. A mental weight I hadn't noticed was lifting. I caught up on assignments I'd been neglecting, went back to the gym, and, maybe most surprisingly, enjoyed spending time with my roommate without my mind drifting back to Madison. It felt like I'd been holding my breath for months and had finally exhaled. Then Sunday night came, and my phone lit up with her name, but I felt nothing. No nervous energy, no flicker of excitement, no secret wish that she'd changed her mind. I picked up the call without hesitation. She sounded upbeat, asked about my weekend and made a few familiar jokes, but it felt like she was trying a little too hard to keep the chat going. My replies were shorter than usual. Not unkind, just no longer invested. When she asked if I wanted to grab coffee later that week like we usually did, I said I wasn't sure, that things were a bit hectic. After about 10 minutes, I could tell she was starting to notice the shift. Her tone dropped, and she asked if something had changed since Friday. I told her honestly that I was fine, not upset at all, but that I really was busy and needed to wrap up. That's when her mask cracked. She began apologizing, genuinely. She said our conversation had been on her mind all weekend, and that maybe she'd acted too quickly. She hadn't meant to hurt me, and what caught her off guard was how calmly I'd accepted it instead of pushing for something more. She confessed that my response had rattled her. She talked about how natural everything had felt before I opened up, and wondered aloud if maybe, in trying to protect the friendship, she'd never fully considered the relationship potential. That maybe she had been too quick to shut it down. I let her speak, just as I had during dinner, and when she finally stopped, I could feel her waiting for a hopeful reaction. But I didn't give her one. I told her to pretend I'd never brought it up, that I trusted her initial instincts. Perhaps we were indeed meant to stay friends, and that I didn't want her to start doubting herself just because I didn't respond the way she'd expected. I thanked her for calling, said I really needed to go, and ended the call. What followed was silence. No texts, no attempts to reschedule or reconnect, no casual invitations or light-hearted check-ins. It was as if she finally understood that I wasn't holding on anymore. Looking back, I see now that Madison's reaction wasn't just about my confession. It was about realizing she no longer held emotional leverage. I didn't need her permission to move forward. She genuinely looked startled when I didn't push back or attempt to win her over after she gave me her decision. 2 days later, she called, and I could tell from her tone that she'd expected a dramatic reaction, some kind of emotional pursuit that would show her I cared enough to fight. But what she didn't realize was that my calm response came from a place of respect. I chose to trust her words the first time she said them. When someone tells you they're not interested in pursuing something romantic, taking them at face value isn't a sign of apathy. It's a way of respecting their truth above your own wishes. It's about honoring their ability to choose, even if it clashes with your own desire. That moment ended up being a mirror, showing me something essential about myself. For the longest time, I thought that persistence was love's true test, that chasing someone proved devotion. But going through that moment of rejection shifted something inside me. I realized that true respect doesn't wait around for a second refusal. If someone says no, and they mean it, then that should be enough. That realization forced me to reassess what I thought existed between us. I had believed Madison and I shared a bond that ran deeper than mere friendship. But with distance and reflection, I could see how much of that was built on my own projections. I had taken everyday moments, smiles, texts, conversations, and woven them into something bigger than they were. I was seeing what I wanted to see. In truth, we were two classmates who got along well, not some hidden love story waiting to unfold. And rather than feeling crushed by that realization, I felt oddly relieved. It gave me the space to stop over-analyzing every interaction, to let go of the mental strain of trying to decipher signs that were never really there. Instead of chasing ambiguity, I learned to focus on clear boundaries and to recognize when interest was truly mutual. If there's one thing I took away from it all, it's this. There's a quiet kind of strength in walking away when someone says no. There's wisdom in not treating rejection as a puzzle to solve or a wall to climb over. The fact that Madison seemed surprised I didn't chase after her said a lot about her expectations, but those weren't mine to fulfill. I didn't owe her a show of desperation. I didn't need to plead or push after she'd spoken her truth. After that last call, I still saw her around campus here and there. She'd smile, maybe linger for a second or two, possibly hoping something had changed. But for me, it hadn't. I'd already let go. I stayed polite during those brief run-ins, but I didn't seek her out or try to rebuild what we once had. The connection had run its course, and I was at peace with that. The most valuable lesson I learned was that sometimes the healthiest way to deal with rejection is to accept it without resistance and redirect your energy elsewhere. Letting go of someone who doesn't want to be held onto can make space for people who actually choose you in return. So if you ever find yourself in a similar situation, here's my honest advice. Take people at their word the first time. If someone says they're not interested in dating you, trust them. If they change their mind, they'll make that clear. It's not your job to convince them otherwise. There's real dignity in accepting a no without trying to rewrite it. That kind of response shows self-respect, maturity, and the belief that love isn't something to be earned by persuasion. It allows you to pour your effort into places where it's truly wanted. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is simply walk away, with composure and self-assurance. Sometimes silence speaks louder than any argument. And sometimes the person bracing for a dramatic scene is most shaken when you just smile, split the bill, and exit without turning around. That's where this story closes. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching. If this message resonated with you, feel free to check out the other videos on the channel. Be well, and until we meet again.